Hi, I'm Eric Grant with Sayrite. These are some bow cushions that are 15 years old. They needed some repair. They have a rip in them, they have corners that are braided through, they have a zipper that needs to be replaced, and we're going to show you how you can basically fix your old cushions to make them usable again for maybe a few more years.
In this first chapter, we're going to place a patch on a rip in the boxing of this cushion.
So with this cushion, what we're going to do is we're going to inspect it. The foam definitely needs to be replaced. It is bottomed out. It almost goes straight back to the backer board. What we're doing is we're inspecting to see if the fabric needs any repair before we do that. Like here's a corner that has a rip in it. This is the major one right here. So here you can see there's a huge rip in it. And we're going to repair it not by putting a patch on the inside, but on the outside. And we're going to make it with a hem here and a hem here, and we're going to sew it into the top plate and the bottom plate. On the back side, we have to remove this hinge, and I believe the hinge is here. We're just going to unscrew them from the backer board. So we're going to unzip the zipper, and we're going to take this cover off now that we have all that hardware off of the back. And we're going to look at the backer board is a plastic one. I have no idea why they wrap dry fast foam in plastic. But let's get this out of here. Because if you wrap dry fast foam in a plastic, it can't dry out very well, unless they left the bottom open. But it looks like there's a vinyl on that, so let's just see what it is. So we got the cover off, and it was a very tight fit. And I'm going to turn it wrong side out. So here's our rip, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to rip the stitches about, probably 1.25 inches from the edge of the rip, and then going 1.25 inches, and I'm just guessing at this, from here, and then straight down here. So we're going to just loosen this part so that we can put fabric in here and sew it into this. Right over here. Let's see, there's 2 stitches for this. Right, where's the rip? Right there. Right about there. And then we got to rip, I'm going to use my seam ripper and rip about every third or so stitch, and they should pull out by doing that. I'll show you here in a minute. Okay, so once we have that, it usually just comes apart like this all the way to where you did your last stitch. And looks like I still have a few to do there. And we'll separate it on this side as well. So I marked it with a chalk pencil right where we ripped the stitches up from here to here. And if I measure it, it's about 7 inches this way. I want to make the width the same width as the boxing they had in here. So I'm just going to measure edge to edge, and it's 3-inch boxing. So we're going to cut a piece that's 3 inches wide, and we're going to make it, since this is 7, I'm going to make it 8 inches so that I can do hems on the ends. So this is a Sattler marine grade. I believe that fabric that is on the cushion is Sunbrella marine grade. We sell both, but Sattler is a little bit less expensive, and this color matches perfectly. So that's what we're using here, and I cut it with the Sayrite Edge hot knife, and that just seals the edges. And so this should fit that boxing nicely. So now I'm going to do hems on the end. There's no right side or wrong side. I'm going to put the 3/8 inch basting tape for canvas on both short edges of this, and we're going to hem it to approximately 1/2 inch. Doesn't have to be exact because this is a little bit longer than it needs to be. So 1/2 inch looks like about like that. And we'll do the same thing over here. Okay, so now that we have our patch with the hems, we're going to put this right on top so that this damage is centered. We're going to cut this out. So I'm going to do it right here where the hems are, here and here, and I'll just strike a line down like that, and one like this. And I'm going to use scissors, and I'm going to cut just the boxing, so just this top portion out. Okay, we get rid of that. Now we're going to put double-sided tape here and here. So we're going to put this 1/4 inch double-sided tape close to the hemmed edges, just on the hems, and here as well. And then we're going to flip it over here, and we're going to put it on the long sides of this side because we're going to base the plates to this. The long side, we're going to take the transfer paper off. On the hem side, we're not going to do that yet. And then we're going to base this to the seam allowance that we stole, centering it so that we have excess material. So basically right there, so because we made it the same size, we can just make sure that the edges are lined up. And that looks good. And then we're going to take this little lip, we're going to lift it up, we're going to peel off our transfer paper here, and we're going to baste it down. And we're going to do the same thing here. Nice. Okay, so this is the outside or the inside of the cushion, and there's where we ripped up the stitches, and so this is all needs to be sewn. So I'm just laying this down, making sure that I'm only sewing through the boxing and the plate, and we're going to start sewing back a little bit from the where we ripped up the stitches, which I believe is right here, and we want to be right on top of their stitches. It's hard to see because it's black. There we are, we're right on top. And here I'm going to do a little bit of reversing. Make sure that stays in place. All the way down here. So I just wasn't on the stitch, so looks like it's 3/8 inch. So I'm going to do some reversing here, and because this stitch is on the inside, nobody's going to see that first stitch I did. 3/8 inch is always the outside of the LSZ foot. Yep, now we're running right into those stitches. So I'm over the stitches by about 1 inch and do a little bit of reversing. That side's done. And then to do this side, let me cut these. And all I'm going to do is just flip it over like this. So flip this side down, and we'll do the same thing here. So now I'm going to take this, I'm going to turn it right side out through the zipper, and we're going to flatten this all out, see our patch, because we're going to sew the hems down. So yeah, that looks really good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start sewing right here and sew down to here, and make sure that I'm not sewing through any excess fabric. So I'm going to lay it down and put it underneath the foot. Just get it under there.
This fabric is disgusting. Click the link in the top right or in the description below to see how we clean it and retreat
I can
it.
feel that there's no excess fabric in there. I'm going to put my hand under to make sure. Yep, nothing under there besides the boxing. And I'm going to sew probably with the needle in the right position with the center foot over there. And I'm going to try to stay off of the, go right into the seam right here and do 1 stitch in reverse twice. So watch this, 1 stitch forward, 1 stitch backwards, 1 stitch forward, 1 stitch backwards. That should lock it down. I'm going to sew down to this side, and I'm going to do the same thing when I reach this seam. 1 stitch in, reverse backwards, 1 stitch forward, 1 stitch backwards. Okay, and we're going to do this exact same thing over here, and we'll show you what it looks like when we're done. Nice. And there's what she looks like when we're done, from having a large rip, I think it was on this side, may have been on that side, to now being a finished piece, which just it only shows basically a hem here and a hem there. So nice.
An abraded hole in the corner is difficult to repair. We're going to place a patch on the inside of this boxing.
So this is often what you see in corners, and it's usually from backer boards and such, or either somebody drug the cushion on the corner. You can see my finger through the hole, and it's in the boxing. It is very difficult to repair this with an outer patch, especially because there's a zipper here for the closure. So what you can do for this kind of application, if you have damage to your corner, is actually turn it wrong side out, like we are here. So I've cut a square or a rectangle that's a little bit bigger than the area I need to cover, and it'll go into the zipper seam allowance and the top plate and boxing seam allowance, and I hot knifed all the edges. The goal here is to put this on the inside of that rip. There's the rip, you can see my finger through it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it here, and I'm going to sew it within the seam allowance along here. So I'm not going to sew outside of these stitches that sew the boxing onto the top plate. So in other words, I don't want to see stitches on the outside. And then after that's done, I'm going to sew on the stitches directly on top of where the zipper was sewn. So these stitches will be directly on top of that, and we'll sew on this side when we do that. So let's take it to the machine. Okay, I'm going to do this slowly because it's a little bit confusing. This is my boxing. There's the hole. I'm going to fold this under so that I'm not sewing through anything. All I have is a seam allowance that takes that corner. So let's get this folded so that I don't sew through anything I don't want to. Okay, there we go. And it's laying down pretty flat. That's what I want. And then I'm going to take this patch and I'm going to put it on so that it goes, let's see, it would go underneath. So let's put it underneath here. I was going to put it on top and I was like, no, I don't want to do that. So it's right up against the edge here. And I know I'm going to be sewing through only the seam allowance and where the patch starts, so nobody will see this stitch. So I'm going to do some reversing here. I'm in my seam allowance. Okay. And then I'm going to sew to this corner. Okay, and basically at that corner, everything's still laying nice and flat. I want to make sure I don't have any bubbles in here, so I'm going to tuck them under like that. And then I'm going to try to make this corner. So I'm going to pivot the fabric around. And then I'm going to sew right over here, and then I'm going to do some reversing here. This is basically tacking this on in location. Okay, so that's what I've got. I've got a stitch like this, and then it takes a turn like that, and I'm going to cut my threads, and we'll show you what we do with the zipper side. When I turn this right side out, which is what we need to do next, and if you push in the corner, you'll see there's no stitches in the top plate. You can still see the ugliness of this, but this will basically make it so I can't see my finger through it because I have canvas on the back side right there. So now we're going to turn it this way, and I'm going to reposition it so that I can sew with the boxing or the outside surface out. So like this, and I'm going to flatten this out like that. And then we're just going to push this, and we're going to sew right on top of those stitches. So hopefully this stitch will not be noticeable. So right where the patch starts, which is right about there, my foot's down, and I'm going to sew right here. I'm going to do a little bit of reversing, not to make it too ugly. Maybe one stitch forward, one stitch back, one stitch forward, one stitch back. And then I'm going to go sew slowly. I'm going to turn down my worker bee so that I sew very slowly, and I'm going to sew on top of those stitches. This is right where the zipper is sewn. And if you're not directly on top of them, that's all right. Turn it a little bit because we're making this corner. Okay, there's the end of my patch, and I'm going to do one stitch backwards, one stitch forward, one stitch backwards, one stitch forward. And now let's see what it looks like. Nice. So the stitches are not directly on top of that zipper stitch, but they're close. And the whole idea here is that now we have a patch that will reinforce that, probably the backer board that's rubbing up against it, and you won't see just a blaring hole. And we can take it over and we can actually touch up this rawness with a hot knife a little bit, but be careful about doing that. Sometimes I don't do it at all. I think I'll try to touch it a little bit to keep it from unraveling more. So that's how you repair a corner like this without having to put a patch on top. If you want to try to repair the outside of it with a hot knife, take off this foot. This is the precision cutting foot and blade. We'll take off that bottom foot part, which gives me kind of like a sharp edge, and then just carefully touch it because you don't want to create a worse problem than you already have, which is not very pretty right now. You know, that kind of cleans it up a little bit without causing more damage. Do this very carefully. Maybe not do it at all. It's up to you.
In this chapter, we will replace a damaged zipper. Now, this is not the zipper for inserting the foam, but rather an attachment zipper to secure a backrest to a seat bottom cushion.
On this cushion, we found there was a zipper that's basically destroyed, so we're going to replace it. So we'll remove the foam. This is a cushion that folds. We've already taken the foam out of this one. And the foam is, again, compressed terribly, so it's going to be replaced. Where's the zipper at? Oh, there's the zipper. You cannot use this again. That's why we're replacing it and using the covers over. Okay, just in case we can't tell where the zipper starts and stops, we're going to mark it with chalk on the plate. And this is the post end, so I'm doing the right P for post. In other words, this is a starter post or starter pin. And then we're going to mark it here where the zipper ends. And right here where the stopper is, that's the stop. So we'll mark S for stop. Okay, so now what we need to do is rip the stitches, and you have to do that from the inside to get that zipper off and replace it. So I'm going to rip the stitches about every third stitch all the way to the other end, and we'll pull that zipper out of here and show you what's next. So the old zipper measures 34 inches, so I bought a 36 inches in the same brand. This is YKK. This is the new one. We're going to separate the halves. We obviously need the one with the starter post, this one, and not the starter box. So we're going to set this one aside. And don't ever cut off the starter post. Now don't get confused about this coil zipper here. This is a molded tooth zipper. This is meant for taking the foam in and out. And this goes together like this. This fabric became folded back just because in time it does. So I'm going to move this aside. Let's just put it over here. And I'm going to put double-sided tape on. Let's see which side. I want to base it on this one first, I think. And there's where we want to start it. So I'm going to put double-sided tape on this side. And that's going to be the 1/4 inch double-sided tape for seam stick and canvas. This is about the only thing that makes it possible to replace zippers easily, because you can pre-baste everything in place. So let's run it all the way down the end. Even though this zipper is too long, we're going to have to cut it short eventually. So I'm going to peel off the transfer paper. Remember, this is the outside of the cushion. So the zipper would go in like this because it faced the outside like that before. You may want to take note of that when you're taking it apart. There's where we start. I'm going to baste it on so that it's flush with the edge. That's where theirs was. And we're going to do this carefully down here, and this is just matching it up to the plate. Okay, so it's on all the way to this mark here. That's the stop mark. We need to put a stop here, so I'm going to get a stop. I'm just going to use this binding stop they have on here. This is the old one. It's still in pretty good shape. We're going to put it on, if I remember right, let's see, does it stops right about here. So I'm going to put basting tape on the middle of this. You get my fat fingers to do it. That way you can stick it to it. Stick it to it good. Over the teeth. There we go. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting double-sided tape on this side of the zipper. I could have done that earlier, all the way down just like we did before. Now we're going to peel off the transfer paper on this zipper, and I'm going to go just a couple feet down. And our job here is to baste this to it. And remember, it's folded out. It's probably going to be the same on yours if you're replacing one. So you need to unfold it and stick it on to your zipper so that the edges are matched up. Okay, and you don't want any excess fabric in this, and you don't want to pull it too much because you can stretch things. So hopefully when we get to the end, you can see how I'm matching up the edges as I go. Hopefully when we get to the end, it's going to be the same. So I'm unfolding this, matching up the edge. This was not hot knifed. That's why it's coming apart. That is a bad thing. I like to hot knife all of my fabric, but we didn't make these cushions. We're just repairing them and putting new foam in. Okay, before I baste this together, I'm going to cut this right where the stop is. And then we're going to continue to baste this all the way to the end. It looks like everything's going to come out nice. It's just that there's a lot of bulk here, especially since they have a cup holder in here, which is pretty cool. All right, when I get this all basted, we're going to take it to the machine and we're going to sew it. Okay, so this is not the zipper we're sewing in, it's the one right under here. We turned this whole assembly wrong side out so we could get to our corner assembly, and there's where the zipper basically starts right about there. So I'm going to sew on top of those stitches. It looks like 3/8 inches our seam allowance again. So right here, we're going to do some reversing. And I am going to sew, let's see, yeah, that's good. Okay, so if anything, I want to sew a little bit inside of those edges, or the blast stitches, so they don't show up. So you can see we started sewing here, and then I stopped because I wanted to inspect to see where a stitch was falling. So I splayed it open to where the zipper is, and I don't know if you can see this, but right here is where they had it stitched before. So I need to move my needle closer to the zipper's teeth. So you don't have to rip out these stitches, we can just sew beside them. So I'm going to lay this back down in here. I'm going to start where I started before. The teeth are right here, I can feel them with my fingers. And let's go to the teeth first and set the presser foot right beside the teeth. And I'm going to move my needle to the left, okay? So now I'm going to go backwards now that I have that position set, and that basically puts our presser foot almost up against the edge of the fabric. And we're going to start right here, which will helpfully keep us from seeing those stitches. So I'm going to bury my needle, and let's start sewing here, doing some reversing here. Go back. Okay, and now we're going to sew down here. Make sure everything's flat, and make sure you're not sewing into the anything you're not supposed to be sewing into. That would be awful. Okay, we're going to go all the way down the zipper. Just laying it flat as we go. Pushing the teeth up against the left side of the presser foot. Checking occasionally to make sure that everything is splayed out perfectly, and it is.
The foam in these old cushions was completely bottomed out, unusable. We're going to show you how to replace it.
Okay, so we're going to separate the backer board from the foam. Sometimes it's glued. This one's not, because it's really difficult to get it out of the cover. And so they put the backer board in first, and then they put the foam in. So this dry fast foam usually should not be wrapped in a plastic like this unless it has breathability at the bottom. It doesn't, because it has that vinyl on there. So we're not going to put plastic on the new one. I'm not going to use the foam as my pattern. I'm going to use the backer board as my pattern, so I'm going to get the foam up here. This is my new foam, and this is the side that the foam is against, so it goes down, face down on the foam.
We're using Sayorite's Cushion Right Dry Fast Foam. This is a 2-inch foam. We want to mark right along the outer edge of our backer board, and this places the line about a 1/4 inch away from the backer board, so the foam should be slightly bigger than the backer board. We'll trace all the way around it.
This is a Sayorite blade foam saw. You don't have to use this. You could use an electric kitchen knife too, but this does make a nice cut.
We'll cut to the outside edge of our marker so that our foam is again slightly bigger than the backer board. The blade foam saw rolls on a base with 4 rollers, so you get almost a perfectly vertical cut.
If you use an electric turkey knife, just make sure you hold the blade as straight as possible, but it does cut well. So you don't have to spend the money on a blade foam saw. This is the side that's going to have the foam in it. We're going to put this in first. This is the outside. Underside has the holes in it. So we're going to put this inside of here. And I might have to get a second helper for this. Let's see if I can do it. Oh, maybe I can do it. Just position it in place. Make sure it's going the right way. Okay, make sure that the backer board is on the seam, which it is right now. Perfect. It's going to go in like this, and then we'll have to compress it to get it to go in, but our cover should be in approximately the right spot. So I'm going to squish this down, and it's going to take some time to get it in there. So I will come back after I get it worked in to my cover and show you what it looks like. So we got that foam in there. It's not zipped up yet. Looks like we still need to go a little bit this way, so I'm just pushing my foam in there, and let's zip it up and see what she looks like. So we went from really bad foam to brand new foam, and we did a couple little repairs on this cushion to prolong its life. Here's the patch that we put in, which really does look nice. It almost looks like it's part of the cushion rather than just being a patch. So there we go. That's how easy it is to replace your foam and do a little bit of repair.
Here's a cushion without a backer board and foam that is totally disintegrated. It is not a rectangular shaped cushion, it has some shape. So how do you pattern from the old cushion to cut new foam for the cushion cover? Well, check out the link in the description below for a video showing how to accomplish that task. You can also see a video link below on how we clean these old cushion covers and retreat them so they are water and stain resistant again. We hope this video has been helpful. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and click the bell to be notified of new tutorial videos when they become available. I'm Eric Grant, and from all of us here at Sailrite, thanks for watching.